Let's get into the frame of mind for our sit today. So we're just gonna take a minute just to sit in silence to just kind of be together in silence for the beginning of our session today. Yai lai, yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai, yai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai. Yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, lai lai lai. Okay, tov everybody. As you may have guessed from the melody that I just sang, I want to explore themes of Pesach. Can't imagine why we would do that on this particular sit, but it will get us into a spiritual frame of mind for the holiday. I hope we can do an exploration now, a mindful exploration of some of the central, at least two major central ideas from Passover that we can look at today. And I figured I'll just, oops, I'm trying to set up the thing here. Figure I'll just jump in. So we're going to do a little text study first, and then we'll do a sit. This is obviously from the Haggadah, and I want us to start with the four children. We all know it well, but now we're going to look at it with new lenses today, with the meaning of the four children from a mindful or even spiritual perspective. So first, let's just, I'm just going to read through it, even though we know it, so that we can just have all of the ideas in it in our minds. And what I'm going to ask us to have like a little bit of a conversation about it first, sort of a mini Seder here. The question I want you to think about when I read them is, what are the different feeling tones, emotional feeling tones that we associate with all of the four children? Okay, so keep that in mind, open up to the feelings that it brings up in us, and I'll read. What does the wise child say? What are the testimonies, statutes, and judgments that the Lord our God commanded you? And accordingly, you will say to him or her, as per the laws of the Pesach sacrifice, we may not eat an afikomen after we finished eating the Pesach sacrifice. What does the evil child say? What is this worship to you and not to him? And since he excluded himself from the collective, he denied a principle of the Jewish faith. And accordingly, you will blunt his teeth and say to him, for the sake of this, did the Lord do this for me and my going out of Mitzrayim? For me and not for him. If he or she had been there, he would not have been saved. Or she would not have been saved. Okay, you get my point here. I'm trying to be gender inclusive here. What does the innocent child say? What is this? And you will say to him, with the strength of God's hand did the Lord take us from Egypt, from the house of slaves. And regarding the one who doesn't know to ask, you will open the conversation for him, as it is said, and you will speak to your son on that day, saying, for the sake of this did the Lord do this for me in my going out of Mitzrayim. Okay, so now I want to ask you, so let's go child by child. Let's start with the wise child. What is the emotional feeling tone that we associate with the wise child? Somebody. what is the emotions? What is the experience? What does it mean? What is it? How does it make you feel? Or how do you think that child feels? Do it that way. Project yourself into that child.
He's curious. He wants to know. He wants to understand.
Okay, so he's got a deep curiosity in a really wonderful way, right? It's a probing curiosity. It's not just simple curiosity. It's really a desire to go deep into something. It's the impulse to achieve insight that is very powerful here in this child. Great. Okay.
He's engaged. He's already engaged in the discussion.
Beautiful. So he's present. Okay. He's mindful, right? He's very mindful, very present, very connected, taking in everything and attempting to assimilate it. Beautiful. Beautiful.
Humility.
All right, Ellen, go ahead.
I was just saying there's a humility about that.
A humility. He's not claiming to have an answer. He is open to receiving wisdom and insight. Right.
But why did the translation say "do for you" instead of "for us"?
Well, because there are different versions of it. In some, it's probably in the earlier versions, it's quoting the Torah where it says "for you," and that's why there are many who point out he's actually asking the same question, but in a different form as the wicked child, which is very interesting, right? So now let's move to the wicked child. This is the easiest one, right? What's the feeling tone here? Eileen, you want to unmute yourself. I think
yeah, he's very sassy.
Very sassy.
And starting to start trouble. Wants to start trouble.
Very kind of stereotypically adolescent, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think the wise son was the oldest of the sons.
Okay.
From his commentary.
Others.
He's also rejecting. This has nothing to do with me.
Yeah. So what are the emotions that we associate with rejection, with purposely detaching, right? We can say almost, is there resentment?
Yeah, it's usually negative, aggressive.
Yeah.
Not of you.
Yes, there's aggression.
Not self-aware enough to acknowledge who he is, what he's doing, deflecting in that way.
Yeah, good. So it could reflect a lack of self-awareness. It could reflect a kind of, not only aggression, but maybe defensive. So all of these negative emotional states are being captured in this wicked child, isn't there? So anyone else? Yeah, I think we've pretty much covered it. There is, if the wise child is deeply open and seeking, he's a seeker. The wicked child is the opposite of that. He's not seeking balance. He's seeking tumult, right? He's seeking rebellion. He's seeking trouble. Okay, so one is kind of seeking a harmony, and the second one is seeking disharmony. Okay, okay. Now, how about the simple child who just says, "What's this?" How can we name the spiritual, emotional experience of that child? This is getting harder and harder now, but see if you can do it. See if you can name what's happening for that child who just says, "What's this?"
He doesn't understand.
Okay, so maybe confused.
Could be.
Could be.
Thinking that age is, he's probably a little younger.
Okay, so
I think it's interesting that the translation was innocent and not simple. So innocent who hasn't had the exposure, hasn't had the experience to know what these things are.
nice. So that's one of them. So another, so good. Yeah. So, and the Hebrew is tam, right? So Tam, God tells Abraham to be Tamim. God, and that's how Noach is also described. And that's how Jacob is described. Ish Tam Yoshevo Halim. So it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. To be Tam is to be in the position of saying, what is this?
It's also a position of wonder and not so self-conscious that he doesn't ask the question. He does ask that question.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that when we usually talk about mindfulness meditation, you talk about having a beginner's mind,
Yes.
Yeah.
that you see something with new eyes for the first time.
Exactly. And that's, in Zen and other traditions, they talk about beginner's mind, which is exactly that. It's simply without judgment, without, and this is not the same thing as the wise child. The wise child is also very present, but the wise child, one could argue, is doing a lot of thinking about the experience, which is not a bad thing. That's a good thing, especially Jewishly. That's a wonderful thing, right? But the wise child receives what's happening and then wants to assimilate it and put it into a larger picture of wisdom. The Tam, the simple child, is not doing any of that. He's just responding to what is, right? And looking at it with fresh eyes, right? And so that is a very profound spiritual practice right there. Actually, if in case you haven't figured it out by now, I'm actually pointing out that all four of them represent profound spiritual practices. All four of them. And now let's go to the child who doesn't know how to ask. How could we possibly find a way to name this experience? What, we really got a sense of the simple child who's with the beginner's mind. So what is the child who doesn't know how to ask?
I want to go back to the simple child and this one at the same time, because what has gone back in my mind, given past experience with my family, I always think of the child who, not just the young baby or the younger one who doesn't know, but the mentally challenged child that doesn't have the background and sometimes doesn't know what's going on or doesn't know what to ask, and is just looking at it in a much more simplistic fashion. Not wicked, just
Beautiful.
different capability.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And I think of that last child as a child that is waiting. And to me, it always says more about the rest of us needing to step in and give an offer because we're not getting that question in a more direct way.
It's beautiful.
And I also want to say that I over the years, as Sarah would say, looking at my family, I don't necessarily, I know that we're taught to say, well, the oldest child, and then we always make the youngest child ask the 4 questions and it ends up with that child. But I think that what everybody possesses in their own soul and spirit could represent wisdom at all different ages.
Yes.
And simpleness at all different ages. So it always feels very individual to me, even though the Haggadah has it laid out sort of hierarchically.
Yes, I think you're right. And that's exactly what we're exploring today, is exactly that. And you put it more beautifully than I could, Patty. That's, and we've all talked about this at our Seders at some point or another, that we're all 4 children all the time, and we have all those different dimensions. We're going deeper into that today, right?
But maybe that's the child. Maybe we're rushing in to provide those answers, and we're not giving that child enough time to come up with the questions.
Yeah, beautiful. Anyone else? Okay, so what I want to do is go back to the screen share. And what I want to do now is come back to something I believe I've taught before, if not in this class, elsewhere, and that is the 4 olamot, the 4 worlds. You got to start at the bottom here, because this is a Kabbalistic way of looking at the 4 children. Asiya is the world of action. And then above that world is Yitzira, which is the name, by the way, of our yeshiva of the arts, is the world of formation. And then above that is Bria, the world of creation. And then above that is Atzilut, which I don't agree with this world of archetypes. I just got this off the internet. I wouldn't translate that as a world of archetypes. We'll get to Atzilut and I'll explain what I think that means. So this world that we live in is the world of Asiya. And so these are all the higher spiritual realms. The higher you go, the closer you get to the Godhead, right? And so we're the farthest away you can get from the Godhead in our world. Now, there's a beautiful Hasidic teaching that I wanted to share. There's a Hasidic teaching that says that if you want to understand the spiritual impact of the four children, you have to flip the hierarchy of the four children on its head. We usually say that the greatest of the four is the wise child. But according to this Hasidic teaching, the greatest of the four is the child She'eno Yodea Lishol, the child who doesn't know how to ask, because that child lives up in Atzilut, right? Atzilut, this is the sphere of Keter, or the crown sphere, the top of the Kabbalistic system. That is the closest thing to what we call Ein Sof, or the infinite, without boundary. So, and let's plug in the four kids here. Bria, the world of creation, is also the world of mind and wisdom. So we would put the wise child here in Bria, right? So it's a different order than we usually put it in the Haggadah. And then beneath that, Yetzirah, the world of formation, is where different elements come together, but sometimes they bump up against each other and create, sort of thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. That's Yetzirah. And that's the world of the wicked child, right? Who's looking not for peace, but for tumult in some kind of way. And then on the bottom, we have Asiya, which is the world of the simple child, right? And that's where, and I've seen other systems where you put the wise child in Asiya and you put the simple child in Bria, right? Because, in fact, I like that one better. I want to teach that one instead because that one makes more sense to me. So you have the wise child who's actually at the bottom here, and the wise child, why? Because he's asking questions of profound spiritual teachings. Why? So he can figure out the right thing to do. And so that is wisdom, because that's what this world is all about. You have to know how to take these spiritual concepts and translate them into action, right? And then up here, these top two, where you have the simple child and the child who doesn't know how to ask, this is the world where we're cultivating in our mindfulness practice. Yetzirah, we can associate with our inner world of the workings of the mind, discursive thought, right? Emotions and neuroses, and all of these interior states that are always in formation, that are constantly dynamic and constantly moving around in our experience. So, I think I've always loved that Hasidic teaching because it's a total inversion of this in a really profound way. And I want to help us to understand why a little bit more before we sit for our first session of sitting. The meaning of why we would put the Eno Yodea Lishol at the very, very top. Okay, so if Ein Sof, the infinite, is up there, if you look at what is the spiritual journey of the human life? When we are born and when we are infants, if you look into the eyes of a newborn, it is one of the most spiritually transcendent things you can ever do. And we all know exactly what I'm talking about. A little baby looks at the world and they're still in Atzilut. For them, the entire universe is undifferentiated. There is no me versus anything else. They're in a complete unity with everything. And so when something is uncomfortable with them, the entire universe is uncomfortable, right? That's a baby, right? And then as they go through life, they begin to learn first from their parents and then eventually from their peers, how to differentiate themselves, right? So then a young child, a toddler, then is entering into the tam, right? They're just simply responding to things. What is this? What is this? What is this? And then we tell them what it is, right? And then and that's the maturation process where you begin, individuation, you develop an ego where you leave behind the infinite universe and you become an individual. And then as we continue to grow, then we reach adolescence, and then we're in the wicked child phase where we are then pulling apart ideas that we received and coming up with our own egoic ideas. And then finally, if we're healthy and we haven't been too traumatized, we can reach a healthy, wise child period where we are learning to really act as individuals with our own agency in life. That's the normal process of growing up that is connected to these 4 children. But in the world of spiritual practice, the adult phase is not really the end. There's another phase that comes after you reach the wise child. The other phase is when you begin the process of exploring what's beyond the ego, right? When you're born, you're fused with everything. And then once you reach, your years of wisdom, you begin to understand that there's something beyond this self that you have spent your whole young adult life cultivating. And that is this greater sense of universal connection and interconnection. In a sense, we are going back to Atzilut, but in a new way, because we're able to assimilate all that we have learned on the journey of life, to be able to take the fullness of what we have been, and then to open up once again to the ultimate truth that we are not separate from the infinite. We are all part of this divine unfolding of the Ein Sof. Okay, everybody with me on this? Right? This is what we're doing this is what we cultivate through mindfulness practice. We leave the ego behind. This is why I often talk about, I like saying instead of using the word spirituality, I like calling it maturity, real maturity, the wisdom of maturity. Right, in India, they have this typology of life, right? They have the children, and then they have what's called the householder, right? Which is the person who's in the generative phase of life, raising kids, running a business. And then once their kids have grown, they go off into the forest, right? And they live off the berries, and they let their hair grow all over the place, and they sit and they meditate. Because they've understood in that culture that you move back into an Atzilut phase, but now with bringing the fullness of who you are, because then you enter more profoundly into Atzilut. And so the journey comes full circle, right? Sharon?
But I think I agree with what you say, but it's kind of aspirational, because some people, when they get older, they go back to seeing everything is about me and can't differentiate self from other.
Yeah, and I think that's true for most people. Most people aren't spiritual practitioners. Most people, and of course there's Alzheimer's and there's dementia and all of those things that happen, to many of us. And that's true. And that'll happen even to spiritually enlightened people, right? It doesn't matter. And that's why this process is a gift for those of us who can discover it, right? In that, may we never have dementia, right? But it could happen to any of us. And before we get there, we will have a deep wisdom about who we really, really, really are, which is beyond ego, which is beyond memory, which is beyond all things. It is we are fused with the eternal of the universe, and that's the gift that is possible for us, right? But most people don't become spiritual seekers and spiritual finders. And so they move from adulthood into a more rigid or hardened state. They become very fixed in their ways, and they become sometimes embittered about life, because they, once they reached old age, they feel abandoned by all the things that they counted on when they were younger, without going through the process of letting go of the attachments that we developed in order to cope, in order to exist as younger adults, right? And so this is really the process of going back to Atzilut. So there's profound wisdom in the Kabbalistic / Hasidic inversion of the four children that I wanted to offer to us for our first sit today. Any questions before we go into it, Patty?
Just had one thing to share, and I may have shared this with you a long time ago, Gil. There's this feels like a lot of different things to me. There's this beautiful Wordsworth poem, Intimations of Immortality, about where we come from in the divine with the angels. From trailing clouds of glory do we come, and then life hardens us, and we sort of forget that that's a part of us. And to pull together some of the things you're making me think of, that spark of the divine, which gets buried and pushed aside, is really always still there for us to find, and for us to embrace again after we've felt we've lost it.
There's a beautiful, it reminds me of a beautiful midrash, which I think I've also taught. I never remember when I've taught things before, so I apologize. But it's the midrash about the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light, and how, the light of creation, and how before we are born, an angel of God takes us and shows us all of creation. And through that light, our neshama is able to see from one end of creation to the other. And then the moment that we are born, the angel then goes, shh. and in that shush moment, we're born and we forget everything, right? And then we go through life, and then the journey of life is to come back into that Or. This is what we're doing. This is the Or HaGanuz. So, a baby is born fused with everything, but they can't discern the nature of the brilliant light. And so the spiritual practice that we engage in to reconnect with Atzilut now is to see it through that light, right? And bringing the light of everything that we've gained on this journey of life back to our spiritual source, right? So thank you, Patty, for that. Okay, let's take a couple of minutes to sit, and let's get yourselves in an alert and relaxed way of grounding ourselves on a chair that we're sitting on. Take a nice deep breath in and release. And another deep breath in and release. Now, just allow yourself to come back to your normal breath. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to settle in to the groundedness of this moment. Just feeling our bodies sitting comfortably, feeling the rising and falling of our belly, the breath coming in and out of our nose. Feeling the aliveness, the isness of our bodies, and our sensations and our minds. You may notice certain energies moving, all different kinds of energies, the energies of our hearts beating, the blood flowing, the energies that live within our muscles and our organs, the energies of the movements of the mind, of thought, of emotion. Notice all the different kinds of energies that are coursing and moving and dynamically changing. And just from the grounding of the body and the breath, just notice these many different subtle energies that are moving. Energy of our senses. The energy of life force itself. And so this is just is a little tour, like that angel that took us on a tour of the universe before we were born. Let's start with being the Tam, the simple child, the child who says, "What's this?" And we're each going to notice something unique to our own experience in this moment. So I can't guide you in that, but just notice whatever is coming up into awareness now. What's this? Maybe it's a physical sensation. Maybe it's a thought. Maybe it's a mood, an emotion. Maybe it's a sense experience. What's this? This is the part of us that can simply notice without judgment, without pushing away, without evaluating, without rejecting. What's this? And then allow whatever is arising to be your teacher, to show you the nature of this universe that you are. And as we sit, we may notice different dimensions of energy of the self that emerges. You might notice what we call discursive thinking, just a voice or a series of images or lists of things or strings of words, whatever it is, that is constantly moving. The mind is constantly producing thought. Just notice it. You may notice that this is your wise child. This is the gesture of mind that is trying to make sense of your experience. Maybe it's narrating. Maybe it's worrying. Maybe it's just going off in a different direction entirely from your sit. And that's okay. This is Olam Ha'asiyah. This is the world of doing. Your mind is doing its job. It's thinking about how to take your experience and translate it into a life well lived. It's beautiful. Sit with that. And now, once again, as the Tom, as the simple child, notice other energies that are happening. Maybe there's a sound or a sensation that's bothering you, or that's pleasant. Or maybe there's emotions coming up, or feelings of pleasantness or unpleasantness that are coming up. And maybe there are experiences of judgment coming up, of saying, maybe I'm not doing this right. This isn't happening. This isn't working. What am I doing here? Guess who you're meeting? You're meeting the wicked child. Maybe you're noticing comparing mind, comparing yourself to others, feeling superior or inferior. Thoughts and feelings of resentment or frustration. The wicked child. Different places where things aren't fitting together. the places that we stumble spiritually, mentally, emotionally. And you may notice your attention moving between the three that I've just talked about, between the simple child, the wise child, the wicked child. Sometimes they're happening simultaneously. Sometimes one takes precedence profoundly. You may find your sit dominated by one of those three. Or there might be a haze where it's difficult to discern. Your wise child is having a hard time figuring out which is which. All of that is acceptable. Which leads us now to the final part of this instruction. Eino Yodea Lishol, a part of us that is beyond even the simple child. The Eino Yodea Lishol, the child who doesn't know how to ask, is the very spaciousness within which all the other three arise. The infinite, the void, the openness, the Ein Sof, the expanse beyond any comprehension of the most deepest and most profound mystery. An awareness beyond simple awareness of mind. A divine awareness within which all aspects of ego, the simple, the wicked, the wise, emerge. And notice that you are that. You've always been the Eino Yodea Lishol, even as you are any of the other three. You are always the vast, infinite, unmoving, unchanging, blissfully peaceful, expansive openness. And I invite you to take refuge, to rest in that expansive openness that blissfully rejoices in the emergence of this ego, of this simple and wicked and wise child, of this whole universe that comes up and flourishes for a moment, what we call a lifetime, within this timeless, infinite expanse that you truly are. And we'll take the next couple of minutes now in silence as we inhabit all four of the children that we are. Ya lai lai, ya lai lai, ya lai lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai lai, la la lai lai lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya la lai, ya lai lai lai, ya lai 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 lai. Okay, before I teach the next shorter section, is there anybody who has any questions or reflections on that sit?
I do. I have. You know, listening to this and experiencing it, I look at it from a slightly different perspective. Now retired, now with 6 grandchildren, ranging from just about 15 to just a little over 1 year old.
Baruch Hashem.
And I look at the experiences that I'm having with them. And so when I'm with them one-on-one, or with Leslie 2-on-1, there's a different kind of being that you can experience. I'm not competing. I don't have to perform. I can sort of surrender to each one of them as we encounter it. And we can do things where we discover something together that is, I'm not sure what level, or I'm sort of thinking of the matrix more as a horizontal matrix, but
that works.
You know, where we dip into a reality together, where, you know, whatever I have to give, I can impart with that person.
Beautiful, beautiful. What a bracha.
Yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous. And I look forward to being in that phase, but not too soon, but soon enough. Sharon, you got to unmute, Sharon.
I think I had an experience for each of them, but I only remember the first one because the rest just sort of blended into meditation. But the first one was the most interesting when I was trying to experience the child who doesn't know how to ask. And I kept having this cognitive search for that. And when I was able to get away from that, we live across the street from a schoolyard, and there was sounds of, I think, parents and children playing. And which could either be like an annoyance because I'm trying to focus on this meditation thing, or it could be a distraction. And I tried to just get into it experientially and noticed how I was able to either, like, I could be there and I could be there. And I just had this understanding that it's kind of like the chatter in my mind. You know, the schoolyard is that chatter that's always going on.
That's
and
it.
So that was somehow the piece that stuck with me.
Because what you were experiencing, Sharon, is the deep awareness that there is no separation. It's all emerging within you. The ego, the mind that is Sharon, the kids playing across the street. It all emerges within you, meaning within the Ein Sof, right? Within the Eino Yodea Lijol, right? That from that vantage point, the interconnection and oneness of all things is obvious, right? It's hard in our normal conventional lives to be in that state of awareness, but we can reach it. We can reach it. Judy.
Something very strange happened because I was kind of crossing between all of these things as you were speaking, and the phrase, and I don't even know where it came from, Gil, Ani lo mevina. And it was there, and I kind of pushed, and then I said, that's it.
Mhm.
And I have I had no chance to even cross back again. That was it.
Just to translate for those who don't have the Hebrew, it means I don't understand. Ani lo mevina.
And where that bubbled up from, and not in English either. So go figure.
Well, that because one of the words I use to describe the Ein Sof or the Eino Yodei Alishol is the mystery, right? It's beyond understanding. There's no way to understand it, right? Why does the universe bubble up in moment to moment in this brilliant, incredible symphony of life and energy and color and dance and movement and drama and all of these things? It's a mystery. It's a mystery. Ni lo mevin. Right? And that's a very profound place of wisdom. Right? And all the great sages in Judaism and the Talmud, right? To teach your tongue to say, I don't know. That's a line from the Talmud. Right? And all the great wisdom traditions, the wisest people are the ones who say, I don't know. So, Yesher Koach, Judy, you're a wise woman. We didn't know that already.
One thing that kept coming up for me as I was parsing through these 4 different pieces of who we are, the word that kept popping through the meditation was seeking. I'm seeking, I'm a seeker. And the more that resonated with where I am in my life and who I am on many levels, the more I realized, as you talked about before, maybe there's not that much difference. Where we encompass all of that, and maybe there's a piece of our reaction to those pieces of ourselves that really is seeking in some way to incorporate, to find the goodness, to find ourselves, and realize that we are all one because it lives here.
Beautiful. So in a sense, to respond to that, there's an aspect of who we are that is a seeker, and there's an aspect of who we are that is already found. and it's a dance between those two polarities where our humanity arises.
Well, it's like the red slippers from the Wizard of Oz. We were always wearing them. We don't know what power they have. And then when someone tells us, we go, well, why didn't I know that? All right, that's cool,
You know what I love about this? We've all heard the fairy tales from when we were little and the Wizard of Oz and all of these simplistic little, Bubba Mises and all these things. And we know that they're wise statements. And then when you finally enter into this practice and you actually discover it on your own, you're in a state of, wow, this is really profound. And this has sort of come down to us in these simplified forms, but actually it's what it's all about, right? And then we understand it in a way we never understood it before. Okay, I want to do one quick teaching before we close today. What the word Pesach means. Let me just get the screen up again. So very quickly now, I want to show you something kind of cool. We always translate Pesach as Passover, right? And that's from the Exodus, right? That I will pass over you, ufasachti, right? That's I will pass over. But very interestingly, if you look in an ancient, one of the most ancient translations, the most ancient translation of the Bible is the Targum Onkelos, which translates it into Aramaic. And it says, instead of pasachti, it says ve'echus alechon, which is ve'aniachas alechem in Hebrew. The word chus here is like the word chesed, right? So interestingly, does Pesach actually just mean pass over, like the literal angel of death passing over our houses? Or does it mean something quite spiritual and quite profound? Over and over again, here's other Passover here in Exodus 12:23, and here again, Vayechus. Over and over again in this very ancient translation, Onkelos translate this in terms of the word chesed. So what's going on here? And more examples I have here. Here in Deuteronomy, we translate the word chasav here it is, the Hebrew version of it, as refuge, right? So it's like, you know, kulam chosimbo, we all take refuge in the divine, wings of the divine, right? That's a very powerful spiritual concept in our prayers in the High Holy Days as well, that you take refuge in this kindness of the divine. And that's beginning to point to when we talk about the Korban Pesach, the Paschal offering. It's actually an offering to this incredible divine kindness that provides refuge from the death and destruction that happens around us as the Israelites in this timeless spiritual reality, right? Now, here's another weirdness. Vayipaseach here in the second book of Samuel means lamed, like, you know, somebody who was lame. So what on earth is that how is that connected? Here's Rashi explaining it. Pasach, I will spare you. Okay, he's translating it that way. And he also talks about it as leaping and springing over. So in the biblical sense, when they talk about somebody who is lame, when they walk with a skip, right? They're not walking in a stable way. They're walking in a way that's skipping. And so similarly, Pasach, therefore, if we put all of these different ideas together, Pasach seems to have this profound meaning of chesed, of safety and refuge, and somehow the suffering skips over you. Okay, the suffering skips over you. So what is that, right? What do we do with that? So let's apply what we learn in our mindfulness practice to this notion of Pesach as this incredible kindness that spares us from the suffering. So what is that? Well, let's explore that now in the last couple of minutes now of the sit. How can we enter into the experience of Pasach now? Okay, so everybody, I'm going to ask you to take a moment, take a deep breath and release it. And deep breath in and release. Now come back to breathing normally. Settle into your body again. Just take a moment, enjoying the settledness, the tranquility of this moment. Notice the peacefulness of this moment. Let's start there. Notice, even though there may be thoughts, feelings, sensations going on all the time, and all those 4 kids running around inside of us, even though that's happening, notice the tranquility of this ritual that we call meditation. There's a tranquility and a peacefulness within which all of this arises, not unlike the Ein Sof. In fact, it is the Ein Sof. When we sit in our stable, proud stance of meditation, we are physically embodying the stillness, the peacefulness, the bliss, and the freedom of Eno Yodea Lishol, of the Ein Sof, of the infinite, that we really are. So allow our identity, as it were, to identify with that infinite, grounded stillness. You may notice that in this stillness that we really are, that we are sitting as, in repose as, in this moment, there is no time. Past and future are just rising mental states that come and go, this infinite present, as paradoxic as that is, and thoughts and feelings may come, pleasant, unpleasant. And if they come, see if you can find a stillness so profound in this awareness that you notice that in the moment of noticing thoughts and feelings and sensations, in that indescribable instant, there is nothing at all. By that I mean, whatever thought you had is in the past. Whatever sensations you just felt, pleasant or unpleasant, is already over. In this infinite presence, in the bliss of this present moment of awareness, just now, that's Pasach. It's the place that is always the refuge. It's the place of infinite freedom, where all the suffering of your entire life that you've ever known is over. Thank God. It's over. You're free. There's no pain. There's no worry. There is no sensation. There is nothing. And that's okay. Rather than being terrifying, it's blissful. It's simple, raw, loving awareness. It's the opposite of nothingness in the terrifying sense. It's the fullness of love. Of chesed, of kindness, because in this infinite moment, the ultimate kindness that ends suffering is alive as you. There's no ego here. There's no story of you here. There's no past, there's no future. There's just love. There's just freedom. There's just liberation from all oppression. This is the deepest secret of Pesach. The angel of death, the angel of suffering is passing us by always in the loving kindness of this present moment awareness. Ya la 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 ya la la. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la ya la. Ya la ya la ya la ya la ya la la la. Thank you, everybody. So I really enjoyed our conversation today. I love you. I love the collective wisdom, the collective spiritual insight of this group. This is it's wonderful. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and enjoy your getting ready for Pesach. And I'll see a lot of you later, and see who, if I don't see you later, God willing, I'll see you soon.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Okay, everybody, take care.
Thanks,
you.
Gil.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.